so happy to have you. As expected, you almost have the full range of our second piscine community attending the meeting, and some more will probably join in the next couple of minutes. These are folks from all over Europe, pretty much, and about 50% Germans, and 93 of them, as you can see, who have started the piscine on Monday. And so they're still, to be honest, in community warm-up land. The first week of the remote piscine is a bit quieter. There's no coding. You're really getting to know the others. You're getting to know the tools. And so, yeah, this is kind of going towards the end of the warm-up week, and it's one highlight that we can have a fireside chat with you. Very, very warm welcome.
Thank you, and also good luck to everyone. The piscine is tough, but it's a very special experience, and I hope you enjoy.
So we discussed a little bit that I could never introduce Drusilla appropriately. So very, very briefly, I'll say two things and then pass it to you to share a bit about your background. Drusilla comes from Brazil, but has been in Europe and especially in Finland for more than a decade, almost two. She spent 1 year in Berlin, where I'd be happy to, I hope that it was a good experience. And she's been a game designer for her career. Now she's also CEO of a new company. She's been with great game design places like Rovio, Vuga, Supercell, and now she's running her own startup. We'd love to hear a bit more, and why she has a really good relationship and understanding with 42 is because she actually bootstrapped 42 in Finland, operation called Hive that is mainly supported by Supercell and one of our sister and brother schools up north. So I hope that gives a good mini impression of you. Please share a little bit about your background and what brings you to us.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe I can just open up a little bit more about like my trajectory. So I've been working with in the games industry now for about 17 years. I actually started when I was 19 as a trainee artist. At the time, I was studying design in school. I enjoyed drawing, and that's what got me into games in Brazil. But I've always been like a very curious person, and more like I have this problem-solving mindset, which is something that if I already can like say that it's what ended up connecting me a lot with Hive in the end, like why I really enjoyed that project, because I think it's really cool to have like schools that it's about problem solving, because that's what helps you in life with anything, like I believe, amongst other things. But anyways, I got really interested also in game design. I wanted to learn game design, which is the part of defining the gameplay of the game and working with the team to figure out like what the game should be about, what are the rules, the balancing, like all that stuff. And then at some point I came to Finland 14 years ago to work in a mobile games company at the time called Digital Chocolate. That's where the founders of Supercell actually came from. And then from there, I went to Rovio, worked in some Angry Birds related projects. And then I got an opportunity to go to Berlin, and for the first time as a product lead. So I started getting more interested also in leading teams and people. And I worked at Vuga, and I did enjoy very much my time in Berlin and in that company. And the reason I came back to Finland was actually because Supercell, I already knew the people. I really liked, I worked really well with them in the past, and they had just changed their strategy to be more like tablets first, making games for tablets first and more casual games, which is more like what I'm interested in. Back in the day, they used to make more like web games and more like hardcore. So I just wanted to come back to Finland to work with them, and that was 8 years ago. And in Supercell, I have been working, leading game teams. The game that I worked there was Heyday. some other like prototypes. And then came the Hive project, and which was a time that I actually stopped a bit working with games, and I got really interested in the education side, because we were able to see, like discussing in Supercell, we really started to think a lot about how the people in the industry making games are still very homogeneous, like people of a certain background. And it does show in the products that are being created, and not just like in games, but in general in the tech industry. So, and I was really interested into that at the time. And then the CEO of Supercell actually heard about 42 and had this idea that should we bring that kind of school to Finland. And because I was really excited about that, then he asked me if I would like to lead that project. And I said yes, which in hindsight, it was kind of crazy, because if you think about it, like I'm not Finnish, I don't speak Finnish, I'm not a coder, I'm not from the educational field, but I just felt really passionate about the mission of the school. And I think that's also where that like problem solving mindset like came into place. And a lot of the things that actually you get to develop as you are doing the program of 42, like the resilience, working, like collaboration, like all these things actually help me in that project. It's stuff that the startups value a lot, and that are really valuable, like in anything that you choose to do. And then after Hive Helsinki, I just felt like my mind opened in so many ways, and I realized it strengthened to me what I'm really passionate about. And that's when I decided that it was time for me to start my own company. And then I pitched it to Supercell, and I got some funding for that. And so it was 6 months ago. I kind of wanted to go a little bit back to my roots in terms of, you know, I'm passionate about inclusion in general, both in terms of like people and teams, but also in games. Like I have always believed that games are for everyone, and I'm passionate about making games that anybody could enjoy. You know, if I can one day make a game that my mom loves, that would be like, you know, then I feel like I've accomplished my mission on this earth. So that's what the company is geared more towards, like this idea that, you know, the players and the market is getting more diverse as well, and we need more different kinds of people making games, and try to think of games differently as well, like broaden the definition of what games can be. And hopefully, it's still very soon. It's hard to start a company in a pandemic, but hopefully we will be able to fulfill that.
Very, very brave, that last move in particular. And I think we will come back to that theme of, you know, what do you want? What is important in your life? How do you create meaning? How do you pursue that? Seems to be a thread here. Now, I'm sure a lot of our students are interested in the gaming industry, and to understand a little better you know, what is important from your perspective to get started and to be successful in that field?
Yeah, I think it's very much about, you know, to get started, you have to start doing. In a way, I know that it sounds like, I know how it sounds like a lot of people sometimes ask, like, are there universities or courses that you can go that forms you as a game developer? And there, I know some countries have, but it's not really necessary. It's just like, if you like games, you know, you could get acquainted with the roles that you're interested in. And I'm assuming here that, you know, you guys would be interested in game programming. And then there are different areas there, like, you know, you can be like a front-end developer, a back-end developer, full stack. And they're like, you can work with data. They're like different areas. And, you know, I would recommend like just getting acquainted with the roles that are out there. What kind of games do you enjoy? Would you like to make? What kind of companies are making those games? And, you know, for example, I think it's interesting to see what kind of roles these companies have and what they are asking for, even if you are not there yet, because then it gives you a picture of what's needed, like what are they looking for? Like, so you might see roles that say like, oh, you need like +6 years of experience, and you are not there yet. but then you have a feeling like, okay, so they use this kind of technology, you know, this kind of traits are important. How do I fulfill this? What should I be focusing on? And also, I don't know how it is now, like in Germany, but there's, I would assume there are communities where you can get together and, you know, prototype things together. Here in Finland, we have a lot of that. There are a lot of communities where people just get together, game jams, and it's all about just like getting to know people and, you know, practicing and doing. And then when you apply to companies, just like, yeah, and then just finally, like when you apply to companies, they don't look very much at your academic background. It's just like, you know, how can you contribute? What have you done? What have you learned? Yeah.
So really the portfolio, the competence that you bring with you.
Yeah, portfolio.
That sounds very promising for our approach and the 42 students.
Yeah.
Now, you're a designer and an artist, and of course, our community is mainly coders. And so I think it would be nice to have a little empathy exercise in both directions, right? For you as the 42 students to think about, you know, how is it to work with a designer, and for you as a designer to share a little bit, what is your, what do you think the coders should see, and what best practices might you have seen in terms of working with coders or working in multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary teams more generally with designers, product managers? Like, how does that play out in your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just something like really funny that came to my mind is that I'm working very closely with one coder, and he actually suggested to me, because we are using Unity. I'm not a coder, but we are so like spread so thin that he told me like, Drusilla, I need you to start helping me with Unity and I'm gonna teach you. And then I freaked out a little bit, like, because he said, soon you're gonna be able to start touching the code. And we started on the wrong path when I couldn't even get left and right properly on the mouse. He was like, can you click the right mouse button, please? And I just kept clicking left. It doesn't work. And he's like, okay, this is going to take longer than I thought. But yeah, that was just like something that happened a few days ago.
Patience.
Yeah. But I think overall it boils down to patience, and also it goes for any role, not just coders, but really understanding that people are different and they think differently, and you know, trying to listen. Like sometimes I think it all boils down to like good communication, that, you know, at the end of the day, communication is not just saying things, but it's also making sure that you were understood. And, you know, sometimes I think it can be really hard working with coders that just put a bunch of information on the table and then they feel they are communicating because they are like telling you the information. And then it's like none of it processed because my brain just doesn't work the same way. And it's really, really important to just practice good communication. Like, did you understand what I mean? And if the person doesn't understand, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are stupid. You know, it just means that they think differently. And maybe it's like, you just have to frame it in a different way. And for example, I think artists and designers tend to be very visual. And, you know, if you start like just writing down and putting a lot of like numbers and things like that, like it doesn't register like with my brain. And then then when they start like drawing things, it becomes a bit easier. But even that is personal. Like maybe some coders are more visual than others, and so on. And but yeah, and then I think also with this coder I'm working, when I hired him, for me it was really important for him to be skilled, but I really needed him to be more like this people person as well, that can work with different kinds of people, because I feel like that's the future. Like, I do think the companies are doing better and better at becoming more diverse. And I feel the companies that don't do that, like they will stay behind. Like if you think about, in a few years' time. And I think anybody needs to up their game when it comes to collaborating with people who are different from them, respecting different like experience levels, different backgrounds, because, we can only do great things if we can work together and to our full potential.
Yeah, Team capacity and the ability to give feedback. I think that's very strong advice. Thank you, Drusilla. Next question I would have is around, I guess, how to deal with pressure and time management and self-organization, especially now in a pandemic context, right? We're all very much on our own. We have to organize. We set in the 42's context, of course, you set your own learning goals in a way, right? And you're very much organizing yourself, which on the one hand gives freedom, but on the other hand, you're also relying on yourself, and you might put too much pressure on yourself. That's not helpful anymore. Do you have any insights? How are you? What's your best practice in dealing with reaching goals, setting goals, etc.?
Yeah, I think in Supercell, the teams, they were very independent. So we got a lot of that experience there, that as a team, we would set our own goals, and and we were expected to be responsible to fulfill those. And the two sides of the coin are that one is that it's amazing. Actually, I wouldn't change it for anything, because it gives so much ownership to the team, and that's when you feel like you can do great things, because you have great people who have the freedom to do what they think is right. But then the other side of the coin is this pressure that comes from within. It's not like exterior, it's just from within. You really want to prove yourself, and to be there for the team. And what I noticed that sometimes happens is that people they start to like blur the line between what is like, how can I say this? The lines get blurred. You start taking things personally, like you start feeling like the product is you, the project is you in a way. And if something goes wrong, like you start to get so involved and you want it to work so much that maybe the fear of failure might kick in. And if you fail, you might take it personally, like I suck, like you might take it that way. But I think and I felt that way in my first failures at Supercell. But something that is really important to remember is that, failure is a part of the project process. Making mistakes is a part of it. If you're not making mistakes, it means that you're not trying like different things. It means you're not taking risk. So that was something our CEO at Supercell really reminded us, like, just focus on learning fast. That was kind of like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Just maybe focus on how can we get the learning as fast as possible either way. And especially in my new company now that we are a startup, we want to be faster. We are really trying to focus on this, like how can we optimize for learnings, and what is a project we can do with this amount of people that we can finish in this amount of time so that we can get some learnings, hopefully great success, but learnings as well, like, because it's if you tie everything, like you think that this has to succeed no matter what, then you will never sleep, and if you fail, then you feel like a personal failure, and it shouldn't be that way. You should be more objective about it. And I think just on top of that, I would also say that in COVID times especially, we even for us was a challenge, like time just felt like it was passing too fast. So we started to just like, it felt arbitrary to put deadlines, like let's put a deadline next week for this thing. It felt arbitrary, but it actually helped us just to start like putting deadlines for ourselves to remind us to stay focused, because in these times it's getting a little blurry, I have to say. And then maybe just one more thing is also focusing on the things you can control. Like sometimes you can plan and self-organize and organize with your team brilliantly, but things out of your control happen as well. And you learn new information, and somebody leaves the team, or like all kinds of things can happen. And you just have to like focus on what you can control. How can you pivot? What are the lessons learned, and just move on.
Very, very strong point. The last one is it's Stoic philosophy, right? Only center yourself around the things that you actually can control. Otherwise, you have an external locus of control. It's outside of yourself, and then you might get lucky, but you don't feel that you are actually controlling your own progress, your own life, and that's very painful. So thanks a bunch. Let's move to the second theme, that is 42 and your relation with it, and how you experienced it. I think it would be particularly interesting to hear what you think about the gamification elements of the school, if that's working, where you see potential to grow, and what matters from your perspective as you're going through the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed the concept of 42. For starters, I think the no teacher thing was really like mind-blowing to me at first. And then when I saw the gamification, the holy graph, that was really interesting. I think that's definitely something that really attracted us. And then seeing the students from Hive go through it, it feels like it works really well. I really like this idea of being able to explore different things that, in more traditional schools, I guess you don't get much of a chance to do that. And I think with the 42 model, it's so great that you get to, work with people who are passionate about, the same things, and then you're like exploring, and you can try a path. Maybe that's not for you, and then you try something else. Maybe you want to specialize on that. I think that's really cool. And the achievements as well. I was very impressed when I saw the system, that I'm like, oh, they have everything here. They have quests, they have achievements, they have like currency. They have the what are the, how do you call the clans? I forgot. It's the
well, we call them tribes. I think they're called
tribes
houses in different places, like inspired by the Harry Potter theme.
Yeah.
Coalitions, yeah.
Coalitions, yeah, coalitions. That here was coalitions, yeah. I think that's all really cool, because all those mechanics are very like known in games, like for engagement. So I'm like, I wish there was a school like this when I was younger, maybe at some point. I think I would have wanted, I've heard that in 42, I heard that alumni get to contribute with their expertise. And I'm not sure yet I understand in practice like how that happens. And what I feel like I'd like to see more in that program is more like, we say in games, user-generated content in a way, but like more students coming up with stuff that somehow makes into that, like somehow, I don't know, like students coming up with projects, people rating each other's ideas, more of like a, how can more community related, like like aspects to the whole system.
Actually, that's the perfect segue, I think, to the next point I'd like you to consider for us, and that is exactly that notion of open educational resources, of participation, right? Of how can, is it interesting to consider opening the 42 materials and the way how it's processed? That's something that we're quite interested in here in Wolfsburg. We're developing a specialization on automotive and mobility ecosystems, and we're winning experts, alumni as well, but mostly professors and people from industry, from the R&D labs, to work with us. And I think it's an interesting path. I'm sure we might, or we will definitely also have some hard learnings. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park. I think there are all kinds of intricacies that you don't see when you start out. But I think the openness of 42 is something that is interesting to consider and think about.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you've heard in 42 in Finland, in Hive as well? Is that a notion that might resonate?
Yeah, I don't know exactly now what plans they have, but I do know that the team has a very transparent attitude towards like everything they do. And I think it just comes from a place of, we can be better, like stronger together in a way. So there's nothing really to be gained by being secretive. And then once you share, it's kind of like leading by example as well. So I think it's great that you are doing that, or that you think that way, because it's leading by example. Like when you do it, then maybe others feel more comfortable in doing it. And then when people start doing it, then everybody wins.
Cool. Yeah, very encouraging. And Una, the CEO of Hive now, we've met. She's really wonderful, very strong on the values and diversity side. So I'm very much looking forward. Maybe it's my first excuse to come to Finland. I've never been, and it's a fascinating place in many ways. I wanted to show you one illustration. You've seen it before, but I want the students also to see it. So let me project it quickly, because it actually ties in quite nicely with what we talked about before, the meaning and the transdisciplinarity, etc. So here is my whole desktop, and when I present this, right, this is how we start to think about the scope of the learning at 42. The software engineering, the practice is really at the center. It's the biggest, most important piece. But there are other pieces that complement it. The more sciencey theory part that is interesting to many, and I think should also be available, as well as, you know, the broader themes of how to collaborate, on what worldview you have, how your work fits into that, questions of ethics, etc. And then the art of living, you know, how do you pace yourself? How do you have that resilience that you talked about earlier? So you actually go about, you know, pursuing your professional goals in a meaningful way. Do you have any associations and maybe pointers for us that we should think about that help the students consider the different aspects of learning at 42?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, yeah, when you show me that graph, to see that you're being very like intentional about that other stuff in addition to the software engineering and computer science, because yeah, it is really important. I feel like, for example, from my own story, which I told like a bit earlier, I can unpack that just a little bit, that I realized that I am much better when I'm actually doing things that I care about. I realized that there is such a thing as purpose, even if you're aware of it or not. Like, you know, purpose is important. I at least for me, it was. And at some point in Supercell before Hive, I did feel a bit out of place. Like I love the company, I love the people there. And my mindset was always like, because I felt that loyalty to the company, I felt like I wanna serve it the best way that I can, you know. And then what I realized at some point is the kind of games that they make, even though I love playing them, like Clash of Clans, Brawl Stars, like all that stuff, it was never what made me passionate as a creator. Like I've always been, from day one, like very interested in people who don't consider themselves gamers and catering to that, like making games that make people feel good, that are not based on adrenaline or frustration. Like I've always had that, but somewhere along the road, I forgot it because I really wanted to serve the company, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't excited when I woke up every morning, and I was feeling really sad about that. And I felt bad because I'm like, I'm in an amazing company. I don't think there is any other company I'd want to work at this point. Like they're the best. So what's wrong with me? So that's kind of like how I felt. And then, you know, with a lot of soul searching, I realized that, you know, we are individuals with our own values as well. You know, we have our own values, we have our own motivations. And once you are able to figure out what are those things, they are important too. And that was actually a sad realization for me, because again, I love the company and the people there, but it became clear to me that it was time to go. That I'm like, okay, I got to that point that I have to pursue this. What companies can I pursue this? I'm not interested. Like it's time for me to do this on my own. I am lucky that I kept Supercell's partners because they invested in the company. But yeah, and now even though like I gave up everything in a way, I feel, because, you know, in COVID, it's COVID times, it's really hard to start a company now. The job at Supercell was amazing. I have so many colleagues. We had a lot of perks, and, you know, there was a whole platform in place, you know, for me. And then now I started like from scratch, empty canvas, new people. It's really scary. It's really hard, but I'm happier every day now when I wake up, because I feel like I'm aligned, like with my purpose and what I want to do. And even if it fails, so, you know, some people are like, are you afraid of failing? And I'm like, well, definitely I don't want to fail, but I don't even care about that at this point. I feel like it's important to take that leap of faith. And if things don't work out, I can still feel like I was like on my own path, and I learned, and then I can apply the learnings for whatever comes after. So
that makes a lot of sense, and I can very much relate to that from my time at Google, right? It was a wonderful place, very helpful, lots of support. But then again, you know, when you feel that your heart is not there anymore, and you need to, you have passion and things that drive you to other places, it's important to follow them. And, you know, I guess in the first stage, as when you're in the training and education phase, is to develop those sensors, right? To start to feel and to try out. We've discussed 42 as an identity workshop, right? You can try out different roles. Am I a cybersecurity expert or an AI expert? And you dive into things. You're in this educational environment where it's okay to try something for 2-3 weeks, right? And then maybe you find out, it's not for me. You do a couple of projects in that area, and then you go somewhere else. That's, I think, a real luxury in the educational context.
And I think there as well with the 42, it's like you do so much group work, so you're going to encounter so many different dynamics that, you know, you also start learning about yourself as well. Like, am I a leader, or am I more like a facilitator? Like, you know, and, you know, what kind of people do I really work well with and really complement me? Like having that kind of, developing that self-awareness as well is really important, because you might also be, let's say, in a place that aligns with you, doing something that aligns with you, but maybe the team doesn't, like maybe it's not the right team, you know. It's so having self-awareness also helps you with, you know, finding a good match. It's just like a relationship in a way. You know, what are your needs, where can you contribute, and, you know, yeah, and finding what's the best match for you.
Sweet. So we have one student who already put his hand up, and actually I think it's nice to interject and have him come in. Thanasis, please ask your question.
Hello, Drusilla.
Hi.
Specifically because you mentioned your creative needs being a little bit biased in a company big like that, I wanted to ask if you firstly ever have been in a small group, an independent one, working on games, and how that compares in terms of ambition, freedom, and stuff like that to a bigger company which limits that freedom maybe and kind of puts you in some specific boxes to do what they want, because you mentioned that your creative needs were kind of limited, and that's the reason why you created your own.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah, I think one thing about Supercell is just like, so that nobody gets it wrong, is that I still think the company is not super big, and the teams are small and independent. So, and they are free to do what they want. So in a way, it's the best of both worlds, because each team is treated as a startup almost. But then for me, what the challenge was is because the company is so successful with battle games, like, you know, it's not a secret to anyone. It attracts more people who want to create those games, and then it becomes this vicious circle that then we have a lot of people in the company who have those kind of ideas, and then it's very hard to find a team that would want to do something that is different from that. And then, so that was actually my challenge, like one of the challenges, I would say the main one. But at least like back in the day when I was working, when it wasn't like that, you know, I was working on Heyday, it was a small team, and, we always had that feeling of ownership and that we can make decisions about our own product. So I always appreciated that about the company. But I have worked also in Brazil. The company that I worked with, my first company ever that I worked, it was, I think, 12 people, the whole company, in a very tiny room, and I was a trainee. And what I think was really good, like in this kind of setups, is that it forces you to learn more, have more range, and learn faster. So because you can't really afford to like specialize in something or just do this, or everybody has to kind of do a bit of everything. So I think actually that first experience in Brazil helped me get into this mindset, the problem solving mindset. Like there it was, I was an artist. I could do only 2D stuff, and then we got a project that required 3D, but the 3D artist left the company, and then everybody looked at me. I'm like, but I don't know 3D. Well, learn.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, shit. And then somebody actually started teaching me a little bit, and then I made a project with 3D stuff that a couple of months before I didn't know that I would be able to do. So that was really good. So I think these experiences, if you can get some of these experiences, it can be very enriching.
Well,
Very
thank
cool.
you. That's actually very inspiring for me. Thank you.
Cool. Drusilla, I have one last question before we can go to your reading recommendations. Do you have any tips for our pisciners, how they can be successful and get through the piscine without losing their sanity and ideally, making friendships and so on?
I don't think they will have time to read anything during the piscine.
First recommendation, don't read the reading recommendations during the piscine.
Yeah. The two books that I read before starting the company, they were recommended to me by the CEO of Supercell. It's by a guy called Ben Horowitz, and it's about entrepreneurship. One is called What You Do is Who You Are, and it's about defining a company culture. But overall, I think even though that's not where you are yet, but it is a very interesting book because it has to do with exactly like finding your values and how to lead by example in a way, which I think is beneficial in any way. And then the other one is The Hard Thing About Hard Things, also the same guy, entrepreneurship, and he's just talking about his trajectory as an entrepreneur, all the walls he faced. And why the book is very inspiring to me is because it's not like a typical business book that is just like listing things and what to do in these situations. It's just his story, and he's very honest. Like, this made me throw up, and this one I had no idea, and then like how I could do it. Nobody believed in me, but then I did this and this, and then it worked. And then the whole book is just like, hey, it's gonna be really hard. That's the only point of the book. So it was a good heads up. And but I also like reading stuff like outside of business as well. Like, so for example, I've become a fan of the Obamas, and then I read the Becoming from Michelle Obama, and A Promised Land, the new book from Barack Obama. And it's just because to me, those two individuals, they are like, when you start reading about them, it's very inspiring because they're like leaders and doers and problem solvers who they're really driven by making a positive impact on society. And, and there's a lot of soul searching in their books as well. You learn about them as people. So to me personally, that's very inspiring stories from them.
Super good. I haven't read any of those, and they certainly come on my reading list after the piscine. For us, the piscine is quite intense as well. But thank you so much.
If you're still alive.
We'll get those books and make them available to you guys. Certainly when the school is opening physically in May. So we do have about 10 minutes for questions. I saw one question float by on chat that I'm going to ask you, but if you raise your hand, Lotte, already awesome. There's the first people coming up with questions. One I liked is there a game that you really like, your favorite educational game?
Oh, educational.
Well, let's say with a learning aspect.
That's a really good question, because I don't know if I have been playing a lot of educational games. I'm sorry, I don't think I have an example right now.
Cool. The comment in the chat is, hey, Heyday teaches you how to farm.
Oh, actually, Heyday, I did hear a lot like from players, because the game, it's not meant for kids, but you know, because it's very family friendly and social. So you know, there are a lot of families who play, like parents and their kids, and we heard a lot of parents say that it has helped kids with math, because it's a lot about, you know, you have the recipes, how many ingredients do you need for something, and like managing your resources, your inventory. So they actually reported that that was really good. And it felt like, because they could play together, it was fun for the parents to walk the kids through that process. So maybe Heyday is the answer to the previous question.
I think you're taking a very smart route here. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old at home, and I'm actually trying to teach them as many games as possible, because I think the sheer exercise of learning the rules of a game and how they work is super educational, right? I mean, how often are you thrown into a situation and you have to understand the social game that's being played, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you go a bit broader in terms of educational, I think there is a lot of learning happening in all kinds of contexts. An old comrade of mine, John C.D. Brown, has written a paper, I can post it in the chat in a moment, entitled, "You're playing World of Warcraft, you're hired." And it makes the argument that in these type of games, you have to train your sense of team, right? Working together, you're looking at various places and monitoring information in real time, taking decisions and doing strategy. So I think, you know, I'm not sure how hard the case is, but as a narrative, as a way to conceptualize it, I definitely like the approach. Okay, now let's hear from our students and from staff. Lotte is actually a Codem student and currently on the 42 Wolfsburg staff team. So Lotte, you put up your hand.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, before I started 42, I also studied game design. So I know a little bit about like how games work, of course. I don't know if you ever heard about the 4 types of gamers, and whether you see yourself in any of those boxes of the 4 types of gamers.
I've seen like many different lists, like with different types. There's 4 types. They're all like, I don't know which ones are these specifically. Like, can you remember which ones they were? Like explorer.
Yeah, so it's the so the achiever, explorer, socializer, or the killer.
A killer. That's an interesting one, because I feel like I can be all of them depending on the day. Like I enjoy, like I have a very broad like taste. So I have, for example, played a lot of Brawl Stars from Supercell, and it's about killing and, you know, destroying. So, you know, I was very addicted to that. But I also, one of my favorite games is Animal Crossing, which is a lot of developers actually don't even consider really a game, because it's not about winning anything, but, you know, it's more like about exploring and designing and connecting with other players. So I enjoy a bit of everything. And in this new company, we talk a lot about player needs, not just like the profiles, but just needs in general. So people have the need to feel skillful, to feel powerful, and then there are many games that cater to that, but there are also needs to bond, to nurture, to well, explore, to role play. Like, are there great games doing this or that? And no, then maybe we should try to do something here that could be relatable to a lot of different people. So that's our mindset in the new company.
Cool.
Thank you. Andreas, the baton goes to you.
Thank you very much for being with us. I just browsed your website of Papukaya, and you mentioned there that you're you're targeting especially non-gamers. So that goes into the same direction. And then the last question. So what would you define as a gamer? So what's the specifics about your target audience?
That's really interesting because I have to admit, so the website, I made it myself. It was something I had to learn. And I wrote the text there, and you know, I feel like it's still a little confusing sometimes. And just today we were doing a workshop to learn how to communicate better, and including like what do we mean by gamers, by non-gamers, and you know, it's been an interesting process. But anyways, I guess in the end, like what we call gamers per se is what people think gamers are, which are people who maybe already grew up playing games and have a big bag of game references that they lived with. And whereas like with mobile nowadays, like gaming is so much more accessible and so many people playing on that platform, they don't have that background. They either haven't played any games or they do play a few games, but they don't consider themselves gamers. You know, they might play Heyday. Like they might be a super hardcore Heyday player, but they don't see themselves as gamers because games have not been a part of their life until recently. And then the references for those people might be different. Something we discussed today was, for example, art styles. Like maybe art styles, like we as gamers who grew up with games, we may have like some clear references in our minds, like, oh, there's this Nintendo style, there's this Blizzard style, you know, but for these people, maybe it's something that comes from the left field. Maybe, you know, for a certain kind of game, maybe styles from novels, from romance novels might work better than an Animal Crossing style, like, for example. This is just a very extreme, like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If there's nobody else, I would have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the best way to make money with a game? Are you more into microtransactions? Do you think there should be a fit price, or is it more? Do you think advertisement works best?
No, it's definitely, we call free to play the microtransactions. They're free to play, that, you know, it's free to play, but then during the game you can make microtransactions. Like that has been the way, like, proven to that makes the most money. It's not the easiest, so it's kind of like the high risk high reward thing that, you know, it's the one that gives you more, but it's much harder to design a game with a healthy economy that can support that on the long run. That, you know, you have to think of the game as a service and have to think like, yeah, how do they monetize repeatedly, and how do they keep coming after years and still be monetizing later? So it's much more complex beast. So, you know, a lot of the game developers, they do make a really good money, you know, with smaller games that just, you know, it's just catered to, like, that they are not meant to play for a very long time, but a lot of people play them, and then you can get some ad revenue from that. So they're all like valid. It just depends on what you're willing to bet on and your background.
Great. I think unfortunately our time is up, but we packed a lot in those 50 minutes. That was really, really insightful, and I hope the first of many times that we get to do stuff together. You certainly have a new home in Germany, in Wolfsburg. We would love to host you when you're in the region or have the chance to travel. Please do swing by, and let's stay in touch in the coming months, and hopefully past Corona, we can get together in 3D and celebrate the 42 and our joint efforts a little bit together. Thank you so much for your time, Drusilla.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you all also for the questions, and I hope you got something out of it. And I definitely want to visit when it's possible. I'll remember that.
Very cool. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good week. Bye.